Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Jamie Hughes Show. My name as always is Jamie Hughes and today I'm going to be giving you my review of Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 2, which was entitled A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Now if you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews and all of my Game of Thrones Season 8 reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. And as always in my videos, this review may include spoilers, but this is an extra spoiler warning for these Game of Thrones reviews because there will be lots of spoilers ahead. So I did enjoy this episode of Game of Thrones. For me, it did feel a little bit subdued though. I guess that's kind of fine because we know what's coming. But on the whole, it was a great episode. We got a lot of great story progression. We saw loads and loads of characters reuniting or reconnecting for the first time in a long time. There was so much progression with everyone. Some really heartfelt and poignant moments in this episode. So many funny moments as well. Tortman absolutely stole the show for me. I found myself just like full on like actually lolling at what Tortman was saying because he was just so funny. He was a real fun injection into this episode. But on the whole, there were a few scenes where the pace did slow a little bit, and I don't want to say this episode dragged in points, but yeah, there were a few issues with the pacing. But as I say, on the whole, I can't really say too much, too negative, because you can allow a subdued episode, because essentially what this episode was the calm before the storm, before all hell breaks loose next week. They just use this episode to tie up loose ends and further little story points here and there. But let's jump into the episode review fully then. So we kicked off with Jaime finally arriving in Winterfell. We saw him last week and he was getting stared down by Bran. And he's in the kind of hall area. You've got Jon Snow, Sansa and Daenerys. They're all kind of interrogating him. Daenerys tells him, you know, me and my brother for years have been dreaming about what we're going to do to the Kingslayer when we finally rule the Seven Kingdoms and get our hands on him. And there's a nice exchange there where Daenerys is really laying into Jaime. I think Sansa actually backs her up and she says, you know, he threatened to kill my family, he attacked my father in the streets. And it looks like Daenerys and Sansa are going to be on the same page, and it looks like Jaime's fate is all but sealed. But then Brienne of Tarth comes out of nowhere and basically defends Jaime's honour and says, you know, there was times when I was his captor, when men were trying to force themselves on me. He basically gave up his hand, his arm to save me and to protect me. And I feel like, you know, he's a good man and I would be willing to fight alongside him. And then in that moment there is where we get to see, again, just those little shades of division between Daenerys and Sansa, because then Sansa does side with Brienne of Tarth and says, you know, well, if Brienne trusts him, then I trust him. So Daenerys, you know, it's kind of 2-1 here, because I think Jon doesn't have a lot of dialogue in this scene, but, you know, he says like, well, you know, we need kind of all, if you'll pardon the bad pun, we'll need all the hands we can get. Even though Jaime's only got one, he's still a brilliant fighter. So yeah, there's a little bit of anger there from Daenerys. She kind of takes that anger out on Tyrion, because it is revealed that Cersei is not going to be sending her army, which we kind of knew in the first place, but that's kind of confirmed now. And yeah, she kind of has a little bit of a go at Tyrion, saying, you know, you say that you know your sister, do you know your brother? You know, how far am I going to let you get away with these mistakes before my trust starts to waver? And I thought that was kind of a nice little moment because of what came after as well, because a few scenes later on we got Jorah, who kind of confronts Khaleesi about her scathing kind of attack on Tyrion and says, look, you know, I'm the first to say that I hated Tyrion being Hand of the King, but then at the same time, you know, now I thought about it, he's such a smart guy that we need him, we need his mind, because, you know, on the grand scheme of things, Tyrion could be the one that does save us. So Daenerys kind of calms down a little bit. I think it's kind of implied as well that she needs to kind of have a chat with Sansa and clear the air. So we get, for me, what was without a doubt my favourite scene in this episode. And again, it includes Sansa Stark. So you have Daenerys and Sansa who kind of have a little sit down, and, you know, they kind of talking about things. They make a few little jokes about Jon, about, you know, I think Sansa kind of reveals to Daenerys as to why she feels kind of cold towards her, and she feels like Daenerys is manipulating Jon. Daenerys has a great comeback, and I thought that it was, again, as I say, a really great back and forth between these two characters. And Daenerys is like, well, you know, my only kind of real goal in life has been that I wanted to sit on the Iron Throne. I feel like I should be ruling the Seven Kingdoms, and Jon came to me, and I've basically uplifted my dragons, uplifted my army, uplifted my life, and I'm now fighting alongside him in his war. And maybe there's something in that, like she describes it as his war, because everybody else kind of knows that, like, it's the living and the dead. It's not really Jon's war at all. It's kind of everybody's war. So yeah, so you kind of see the walls break down a little bit between Sansa and Daenerys. They look like they're just about to be on the same page, and then bam, Sansa hits her with a lovely truth bomb. I love this, where she says, well, you know, if we survive this and you control the Seven Kingdoms, what happens to the North? Because it's been taken from us, we fought for it. And it's like, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to let us keep the North, or are you going to be trying to rule us? And there's just a little stare down, and it's kind of Daenerys' smile just slips away from her face, and I loved it because it just shows how far Sansa has come. I can't even get my words out because I'm just so proud of her sticking up for herself once again, and she is really seeing through Daenerys' BS. You know, she kind of sees what Daenerys is truly about in that scene, and it was one of my favourite scenes, if not my favourite scene in this episode. Just these two badasses going at each other, and it definitely looks like Sansa has the upper hand. And then those two are interrupted by the returning Theon Greyjoy to Winterfell, and this is one of those really beautiful scenes that we got, where, you know, that Sansa and Theon reconnect and reunite, and they just have that warm embrace, which was very reminiscent to their embrace just before Theon kind of threw Sansa over the wall. I think in season 6 was it, where she's trying to get to the wall. And again, like I said in my review last week, I think that this is very much Theon's full circle moment, and now he is there fighting alongside the Starks, and it was a really nice moment. And then after that as well, we got another nice scene with Sir Davos, where you have the young girl who had the scar on her face, and, you know, Sir Davos says something to the guy in front of him, and he's like, well, you're not a soldier, but you are now. And he realises that he was kind of being a bit of a dick there, and he kind of tries to soften the blow of what he's just said. Then you have the young girl who says she wants to fight. Gilly comes along and says, well, you can come and protect us in the crypt. And you just kind of really see the sadness in Sir Davos' eyes, because obviously it reminds him of Stannis Baratheon's daughter. And yeah, it was one of those moments. I don't know whether I was feeling overly emotional after the Sansa and Theon little bit that we got before that, but, you know, those two scenes, one after the other, for very different reasons, were both very poignant and really stood out to me. And again, it just shows just little scenes in Game of Thrones that have such a big impact, and those two were definitely ones that stuck out for me. And then we got another reuniting of characters. We had Jon, who is reunited with Tormund, Ed, Sam's reunited with them, the dude, the Lord of Light dude, Beric, you know, the Hound. They're all back, and they're all there, and they're all friends again. It was lovely to see all of these characters just reunite. And as I say, Tormund just had some great lines, and he has one in this scene where he's like, is the big woman still here? And it's just, it's brilliant. I absolutely love Tormund. And then we kind of got a few scenes, you know, sowing the seeds for what was going to go on later with Arya. Gendry tries to warn her about how kind of evil the White Walkers truly are. They are the worst enemy that anyone could ever face. I think he says something like, this isn't like man, this is death. We are literally fighting death. And you see the true fear on Gendry's face as he's saying it. And I don't think he's doing it to scare Arya, but he's really trying to, you know, we're not playing around anymore. This is real, sister. And then Arya just picks up all of the dragon glass arrows and just whips them into that board. And she's like, yeah, whatever, son, I can handle it. I've got this. Just make me that bloody stick thing and I'll just kill them all for fun. It was brilliant, and as I say, it sowed the scenes for what was coming later on in the episode. We then move forward to a conversation with Jaime and Tyrion, where he's like, if father could see us now, you know, here we are in the Stark castle fighting alongside them to basically fight the dead. It was really, really fun. And then we got the introduction of all of the other characters, and just what a wonderful, pure moment. I said it last week as well. There was a moment of like pure joy in last week's episode where, you know, all of this bad stuff is going on, and we got one of those in this episode as well. And that was when all of like the kind of main characters that aren't main characters all came together and were just sat there drinking. They were singing, they were reminiscing, they were having fun, and it was so great to see. You had Tormund just again stealing his every scene he was in with that weird flex he had to try and impress Brianna Tarth, where he's like, yeah, kill the giant, and then just sucked on a giant nipple for like 3 months, and that's why I'm so strong. It was really, really great to see. One of my other favourite scenes that happened around this as well in the episode is when you had Ed, Sam, John, and Ghost. Ghost was in there. She was hiding in the background. You had the three of them. They're like, well, we are the last three brothers of the Night's Watch, and you know, we're here, we're fighting, we are the last stand. And I think Ed has the great line where he's like, you know, last one alive, you know, burn the bodies, basically, because they kind of accepted their fate, that they're gonna die. And it was just a really kind of sweet moment for me, seeing these characters together, possibly for the last time, because as they said, they started at the wall together, and you know, their watch may end together here in the Battle of Winterfell. We then got one of the biggest talking points of the episode, and that was Arya and Gendry getting it on. This is kind of drew mixed reactions from what I've seen online, but I totally get it. Everyone's like, oh, we grew up with Arya. Yeah, that's the point. We've grew up with Arya. She is now a woman. She's her own woman, and at the end of the day, she's gonna go and fight for her life. If she wants to have a bit of hanky-panky with Gendry, let her get it on. I love the line, like, I'm not the Red Woman, take your own bloody pants off. I thought that was great. And yeah, it really shows kind of how much Arya has matured, in the fact that, you know, she feels so visceral. She's like, oh, look at all that beef. Like, you know, I'm literally, I could die in like an hour. You know, I want to go and get myself some. And she definitely got it, sister. She got it daily, nightly, and ever so rightly. And then it cut to a scene a little bit later on, and it looks like she may have regretted the decision. Maybe she thought she should have gone with Podrick. I mean, he's got an unreal amount of sex drive from what we've seen in previous series. But yeah, again, I really like that there was kind of this little scene of her looking away from Gendry after they'd done the deed, and she kind of had a little bit of doubt in her face. Maybe she was feeling a little bit ashamed of what she'd done. I don't think any much more is going to come of that, but it was just a nice little kind of seed being sown of, you know, is that going to have repercussions in a later episode down the line? And then after that, we got kind of the big build in to the next episode, and that was obviously where Jon reveals to Daenerys that he is in fact a Targaryen, the last living male Targaryen, and he has a claim to the Iron Throne if he wants. Daenerys took this very weird for me, I think. Yeah, it was kind of odd the way that she reacted. I don't know how I thought she was going to react, but she kind of reacted quite angrily to this. She's like, you know, oh, well, your brother and your best friend are the only two people that know this. Do you not think that that's a little bit strange, the fact that they are the ones that are telling you this story, because they may be just planting a seed in your mind, so you go against me and you stake your own claim to the Iron Throne, so you can rule not only the North but also the rest of the Seven Kingdoms as well. Now, I don't want to say it, but I say just that reaction alone did make Daenerys feel a little bit unhinged and a little bit unstable. I don't know where they're going to go with it, because obviously they were interrupted, but it was a nice scene, I say, just to see that little shift in Daenerys, where she maybe started to panic more than anything else, in the fact that maybe she knows it's true too. And again, it's going to be really interesting to see what Daenerys does, how she reacts to this. You know, she could accidentally burn Jon on the battlefield. You know, she could get somebody to go and kill Jon. It's going to be really interesting to see how that story does progress, because as I said, Jon revealed that, and then as he's revealing it, as Daenerys is reacting to that news, the horns start going off and we get that final scene of all of our heroes stood on the castle of Winterfell looking out onto the horizon, and there is the Night King and his army of the dead getting ready to storm the castle. And everything about this final scene was perfect. The music, the score, just the way that Tyrion looked out, and we had that slow zoom out, how he just looked so insignificant in between the castle walls. It just got me so bloody excited for next week, and I hope next week's episode is literally, in fact the next 2 episodes is just the Battle of Winterfell, and it's just everybody just getting sliced left, right and centre. Maybe we're going to see some deaths next week. I don't know how I feel about that, but yeah, this episode was good. Don't get me wrong, it was good. It was subdued, like I've said, but it was very, very important to build to that big crescendo at the end. And if nothing else, it just got me so excited for next week. And I did think it was very fun throughout this episode as well, that a lot of the characters seem to have accepted their fate, that they're gonna die. I think nearly every character references it, that, you know, we're gonna die at some point, we're gonna die in an hour, we could die in an hour, we could die, we could die, we could die. So they're accepting it. I think it's gonna be hard for us to accept it. So yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens in next week's episode. So if you guys have seen season 8 episode 2, which was entitled A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and let me know what you thought about it, as always, down in those comments below. And if you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews and all of my Game of Thrones season 8 reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the very next episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. Ta-ra!